What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Small Carrier Market Update. Well, I guess it's a welcome back. Today is Monday, August 25th, and I want to just stop in for a few minutes, give you some news on what we're seeing in the small carrier side, give you some details on some things that are staying pretty much the same, and then give you a little bit of positive stuff that we're seeing in the marketplace. So definitely wanted to take the time out this morning since we're at the end of August, getting ready to go into a completely different time of the year for us from a truckload sector. I just want to get the opportunity to really kind of talk out to the small carriers in regards to what's going on. So as we always start, we want to start with a rejection index, right? And again, if you've been following this and following this journey with us as we go through the playbook, we teach the tender rejection index, which is a really important index for you as a small carrier to be able to determine what does that look like for me if I'm primarily spot freight, right? So your tender rejection index, again, in the most common ways of describing it, is your contracted freight that's being rejected out, that's being put onto the spot market for the spot market carriers to haul it. So this gives you an indication on how it's going. One thing I can tell you is that we're still in a soft market. At a 5.96 is kind of on the low side when it comes to it. And obviously they've trickled up a little bit, which is a slight change from last week, but definitely not in the barrel that we were at the beginning of August. Because at the beginning of August, if you remember, we were getting really close to that low five, even kind of shadowing in at 4. We see a little bit of a pickup, what is a good thing to us, and what we want to make sure is that gives us some positive insight as to what we've seen in this marketplace. Because just quite frankly, we had that spike in July. Remember in July, we almost had that 8 right around the holidays. And then all of a sudden it dropped off like a rock again. And those are the things that we obviously gave us kind of like that false flag, false hope. But these are the things that we want to keep an eye on as we go forward. Outbound tender rejection is very important as a small carrier. Then when I look at it, the next component that's really important is volume. You've got the rejection, but then you also got volume. Volume tells you how much freight there is out there to actually move. This volume now is at 10, right? So if you remember, it had a slight peak right around there in June where we were going up in the 11s, and we started to start seeing those signs. Then it started to tail off again. We had a tail off at the end of July. We were below 9. We had a tail off right there at the middle of June. We were right at 9 again. We're at 10 again. And in comparison, around COVID times, we were 12, 13s. So we're still sitting soft on the freight side. And what I can tell you is that from what we're seeing on the container side of things, we don't see a pickup in sight, right? So I don't see a pickup in volumes in sight. A lot of your port volumes have kind of tapered off a little bit. So I don't see a back to school surge either. I just see kind of a flat redundancy as to what we saw last year. Something to keep an eye on, though. I just wanted to keep my eye on this over the next couple of weeks. So definitely something that we want to keep an eye out for. This is one of your primary reasons why your spot rates are not climbing, is because you don't have any freight there. You got supply and you got demand. You don't see a change in those imbalances on either or. So that's definitely why we're not seeing that. So I wanted to kind of give you that to see. The next thing we're going to look at is the National Truckload Index, NDTI. Right now, it's still holding steady. Right, we're at 230 on a national average across all truckload. Yeah, it's been stuck here for at least for the last 7 days. Now, we did see a bump, right? In mid-July, we saw a little bump where it heightened up to about 240, but it tailed off. So we haven't had any solid momentum over a week or so. Obviously July was an anomaly, but as we move into the August time frame, we're starting to lose that steam and it's starting to tail back at that 230 mark. We haven't seen that 230 mark until about June, and then it kind of bounced out in the beginning of June and then came back towards the tail end of June. But 230 is a mark also that we haven't seen since March and February. So these are where we're having that bounce back and forth from that rates standpoint. If your costs are up, obviously, and rates are flat, this is what's going to impact you the most. And I just don't see a bounce coming soon. Not on the current climate that we are. There are too many pressures coming in a lot of different directions that give us an indication that we don't see a sign of a bounce. I personally don't see a sign of a bounce on the small carrier side. Now, there may be some things that we might be able to kind of lean on as we get closer to the holiday. But right now, there's no sign of any bounces there. One of the good things I can tell you is that we've finally got a little bit of a relief in fuel prices. national average of diesel price dropped 4 cents, now sitting at 371. It's the first time the prices have dipped since early about, I mean, it's been going up for about the last 5 straight weeks, honestly. Still higher than last year, so nothing to get too excited about. But anytime we get a fuel drop, that gives us a little bit of breathing room. And this is our opportunity to really kind of go back and evaluate our spend on diesel. So it's really, really important to kind of look at that too. Then when I move over to the spot rate changes, map's starting to look a little different, right? So even though we don't have these huge spikes here and there, we're starting to see a little bit of difference on the map. May not be in the areas that many of you operate in, but we are starting to see those changes. If you look at the Pacific Northwest, the Midwest, West, and the Northwest, we're starting to see some areas where there's some considerable amount of spot rate changes over in those areas. And then as you go into the Southeast again, where you got a lot of people that like to play in the Southeast and Texas, those are not areas that are going to be very, very favorable for you for right now. But if you have the capacity, if you're running these areas, your blue zones are going to be the best places for you to be. And I can tell you, just looking at the map, and if you remember on our last opportunity in our last episode, on that map, it didn't have that much blue on there. So if these are areas that you run, Montana, Washington State, Oregon, North Dakota, South Dakota, you should be doing all right now. Obviously, that's going to be a lot better than your Southeastern other alternatives. But still, it's anytime you have an opportunity to have something positive, it's definitely one of the things that you want to kind of give a highlight on. So the western part of the United States definitely showing some good signs there.
What's the masterclass all about? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a driver, you're an owner-operator, you're a fleet owner, whether you're in compliance services, dispatcher, no matter what it is, masterclass is for you. Every 2 weeks, you're going to sit down with me and we're going to go over certain business topics that are related specifically to your small trucking company operations. We're going to help you with everything from compliance to how to negotiate better on the spot board, how to find direct freight, and everything in between. This is the reason why you don't want to miss out on Masterclass. It's about an hour to an hour and a half. And then on top of that, you'll have the library to you so that way you can always research and reflect back onto it. Don't miss out this opportunity. This is built specifically for you. I'm excited and I hope to see you in class.
Now, one thing that I did want to call out as a positive is that reefers are still looking good. We're starting to see rejections climbing. So if you see the reefer rejection rate now, reefer rejections are at 14%. And that is a considerable amount. And it is the highest rejection rate we've seen since February. It's a 40% increase over the last 30 days. And it's a steady climb since June. So if you look at June, it's been a steady kind of just trail up from June. Very, very excited to see that climb there and excited to see the opportunities that we're seeing on the reefer side. It's below the 20% peak we saw out there in December, though. If you look at December, we're over there at 20, 22, 23%. But it's definitely something that you can actually say, hey, you know what? On the reefer side, it's not looking as bad. When you look into the truckload index on the reefer side, reefer rates are up there at 260 right now, which is a steady climb from where we were in June. And at the beginning of June, well, actually mid-June, right in 250s. But then if you remember at May, it was sitting about 240. So definitely an increase in climb over there on the reefer truckload index side, about 6 to 7 cents over the past 2 weeks. We're below that 290, but it's heading in the right direction. And then those climbing rates, especially with those rising rejections, you're starting to see spot market pressure on the reefer side. So I think that's something that we want to keep an eye on. And if I were you, I'd keep my eye on this reefer side, because this reefer side could be something that we can kind of carry on to as we're going through the winter. Now, one of the additional charts that I wanted to share with you is the inventory level chart. And the reason why I want to share this chart with you, because I wanted you to get the opportunity to kind of see from a big picture perspective on what's driving freight to become freight volume, right? So the inventory levels on your screen is the Logistics Manager Index, which is what warehouses and what retailers have on hand. What I can tell you right now is retailers are still not putting a bunch of product on the shelf. So obviously freight's not picking up. And when you don't have a lot of product sitting on the shelf, or you don't have a lot of product going to the shelves, that's when you have volumes that cool. So inventory levels dropped again down at 55. You got shippers that are not ordering as much product. Your demand is going to stay soft. The last bump we had was in mid-June, and that was kind of leading off into the holidays, obviously. You see a lot of warehouses kind of playing it safe and not stocking heavy. Some of that's probably tariff-driven. Some of that's just economical-driven as well. And one of the things you can always count on is that if they don't order, we don't haul, plain and simple. So those are the areas that you want to look for. I'm going to keep the logistics managers index and the inventory levels in our market update going forward. So that way you can have an insight as what happened and moving in as you go and moving week to week. But this is one thing that I wanted to share with you. And then also just want to always be transparent in terms of carrier details, net changes. Obviously, these are all net new entrants, right? So this is when you have your new entrants minus your revocations and what you're seeing. So we've gained 52 authorities, since last week, which is obviously is one of those things where when you think about the market that we're in, anytime you're gaining, and I don't care if it's 50 or 5,000, anytime you're gaining, this is impacting your supply. And when your supply is impacted, go back onto a couple of screens when I show you what the rates were. I can tell you that that's how that's impacted as well. We're in a supply versus demand environment. Now, the thing about it is that when you look at some of the losses that we've seen in terms of carrier exits, you have to go back to last year when we saw a consistent carrier exit. This year, not as much. We've seen a lot of optimism this year in terms of carrier entrance. So it's something that you can kind of look forward to as we go through the remainder of the year. Are we going to start seeing those revocations with the whole new push, as you saw from the announcement that we put on the website from Secretary Rubio on saying, hey, kind of just putting a little more of an emphasis on visas when they come into a CDL perspective? Is that going to change? Is that going to have an impact? This data is going to be slow. Overall, we shed thousands of authorities since April, but obviously it takes about 30 to 45 days to kind of see this data to update. So to say all of that, to say that, it's just something that we obviously have to watch for as we go through. Now, the thing about that, we talk about the inbound volumes. This is something that we talked about before. Volumes again sitting soft. Always the opportunity for us to kind of understand where you got volumes versus you got the retail LMI. Always gives you an opportunity to kind of see what's happening, gives you the ability to kind of forecast what you're going to see from a volume standpoint. So I think that that's always something that we want to cover. We want to keep an eye on for you, especially be very, very close to these things as the next coming weeks come along to see if we see any changes. So that was this week's market update. Hopefully there was some information in there that was helpful to you. I want you to make sure that you operate within the sense of planning this week. This is Monday. This is your opportunity to start the week strong. I hope that you take this information and hope some of it gives you some encouragement from one side, but then also I want you to use it to make the good decisions that I know that you're going to make out there on the other. Have a great week, and I will see you next week.